Miriam Pitts. Betty Thompson.
Mary Jackson. Hope Kemp.
Maggie Kemp.
Bruce Bruce.
Priscilla Eby.
Anna Kemp. Anna Kemp.
I'm Katherine Moore. It is November 5th, 2014, and this is my informative speech. What would you do in an emergency situation? Accidents happen, and being prepared can mean the difference between life and death. Learning first aid can save lives, but it's also a fascinating subject, and it's fun to learn about. Now, I've had fairly extensive first aid training. I've taken the American Red Cross, CPR, and first aid certification training several times. I am a member of an Explorer post that specializes in emergency preparedness, and I have taught emergency preparedness at summer camp. And the three basic things that I'm going to talk about today are how to handle an emergency, how to treat some basic injuries, and some common mistakes or misconceptions that people have about first aid. First thing I will talk about is how to handle an emergency. In the event of an emergency, 3 C's, check, call, and care, can help you handle the situation. The first of the 3 C's is check. Check the scene. The scene of an emergency can be hazardous, and the first responder needs to know that it's going to be safe for them to help the victim. The second of the 3 C's is call. Call for help. Now, a lot of people will make this mistake of saying, somebody call 911. You see that in all the movies. The trouble is, a lot of times when that's said, nobody calls 911 because everybody thinks that somebody else is doing it. So what you have to do is you have to point at someone, say, you, call 911 and make eye contact so that they know you're supposed to call 911. The third of the 3 C's is care. Care for the victim. According to the American Red Cross First Aid CPR AED Participants Manual, once you have checked the scene and the person and have made a decision about calling 911 or the local emergency number, you may need to give care until EMS personnel take over. Now, in less serious situations, you can treat the injury yourself, and most people will have some minor injuries at some point in their life. Some of the most common injuries are sprains, cuts, and abrasion. According to the Boy Scouts of America First Aid Merit Badge book, a sprain is what happens when a joint is bent so that the ligaments are overstretched. Now, the healing period of a sprain can be greatly reduced by remembering the acronym RICE. The R in RICE stands for rest. Keep from using the sprained joint as much as possible. Rest speeds up the healing process, and also overusing a sprained injury can cause more damage and stress the joint. The I in RICE stands for ice. Keep a cold pack on the sprained joint. Ice is soothing and brings down inflammation. You do, however, want to keep the ice wrapped in a towel or something because prolonged direct contact of ice to the skin can be damaging. The C in RICE stands for compression. Keep pressure on the sprained joint by wrapping it in a bandage. Compression keeps the swelling down. The E in RICE stands for elevation. Keep the sprained joint elevated. This helps the extra blood to drain from the injury. Now, cuts and abrasions can range from very minor to fatal. A cut is a slice made by something like a knife or a piece of glass. An abrasion is a scrape caused by something like pavement or rough wood being rubbed against the skin. With cuts and abrasions, the two main dangers are bleeding and infection. To stop bleeding, you keep constant pressure on the wound. And if you keep checking to see if the wound is still bleeding, it probably is because it won't stop. If the bleeding is not life-threatening, you need to clean the wound and run cold water over it and put some antibiotic ointment to keep out infection, and also keep the wound covered, a bandage or something, to keep out bacteria. Even a common injury can become serious if it's treated incompetently enough. There's a lot of mistakes that some people make concerning first aid. For example, when someone's bleeding, most people, the first thought is, put a tourniquet on it, it'll stop the bleeding. Trouble with tourniquets is they stop all blood flow to the limb, and this kills off the tissue very quickly. The limb will probably have to be amputated. So use a tourniquet only as a last resort if it's a choice between saving the limb and saving a life. Nosebleeds are very common, and they're not very dangerous if they're dealt with properly. But unfortunately, most people think, as you see in movies, you've got to tip your head back and pinch your nose. When you tip your head back, this allows the blood to drain back down your throat, and it's possible to drown in your own blood. Another common mistake is checking the pulse with the thumb. Now, the thumb has a strong enough heartbeat that even wood can seem to have a pulse if you feel it. When you check a pulse, you use your index finger and your middle finger to check the pulse. So, in conclusion, I've told you a few things that could save lives or just save you a lot of trouble. And I'll finish here with a quote from American Red Cross first aid instructor Doug Watson. The most important thing about first aid is being able to recognize that an emergency is happening, no matter how big or small, and being confident enough to do something about it. The more people that can recognize and react to an emergency, the safer everyone is.